All right. Pablo, Life of Pablo, and additional thoughts. Probably gonna be a longer than normal video. I think you guys are okay with that. I got notes. I got things to say. I got tracks to review. I got a lot of stuff. Okay, let's just jump into the notes, I suppose. The very first thing I put down, in my ideal session of doing a additional thoughts video, the first thing I'll do is when I'm done with the reaction, I'm uploading other stuff like that. When I'm done Friday, I'm done working, I'll put the album back on, start listening, and usually I start a Word document of just putting thoughts, things I notice. Maybe people are linking music videos or interviews, or I'm just kind of catching things, or I'm reading comments and people are saying this and that, and I start to factor them all into, as I experience the album for the rest of the week. This one was interesting because the first thing that happened when I was done with this album, because of No More Parties in LA, which I think is a kind of a legendary track, honestly. The fact that it's Kanye, Kendrick, and Madlib all together, and the beat's great, and the verses are great, and the song is great, and it's 6 minutes long. I mean, it's just awesome that exists, When this album, Life of Pablo, concluded, I know this came out, when is this, 2016? I think this came out before Damn, right before Damn. It made me wonder if Kendrick heard this album after being involved with this album, listened to it, he had released Damn, because I feel like in this album, Kanye's saying a lot. He's saying a lot, and he's kind of saying it between the lines. It isn't direct. It isn't out in the open like Big Steppers is. And the first thing I wondered is, did Kendrick look at this album and think, wow, this is a great piece of work, but then think he didn't come out and say it, Like, I kind of wonder, was the Life of Pablo, even just in the slightest amount, not entirely, but just the slightest amount, was this a form of inspiration for Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers? And this idea of, we've got to come out and say it. I don't really know how well this album was received on release. I did get people tell me about how apparently there was multiple versions of it when it released, and I am not cool with that. This is probably going to be the first time I have like a very, very strong opinion about this, or something, I should say. People were telling me how, I guess, it originally posted the title, and then like Wolves got changed, and then he added St. Pablo, and this got changed, and it was just like a mess. And Kanye had said, oh no, it's a living, breathing piece of art and all this other stuff. And let's just say, for the sake of example, or for the sake of argument, that's true. That Kanye was 100% intentional in releasing this in iterations and alterations and all this other stuff. Even if that was the case and it was intentional, I'm completely against that. Like, that would have pissed me off so much. And actually, it came up yesterday on Discord. Somebody posted how, I guess, on Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, they took down the original release, and now there's a new one on Tidal with The Heart Part 5 as the final track. It's a single track in what's called Volume 3. I'm really, really not okay with that at all. Especially with Big Steppers, like, it closing on Mirror is crucial, in my opinion. Like, that, it must close on that song. The Life of Pablo must close on St. Pablo. If it closes on Fade, I don't think I enjoy this album as much. At least not nearly as much. St. Pablo is so key to this album, and everything that's being said and being unsaid and being implied between the lines. This culmination of him basically looking up at the night sky asking God, where are you? Basically. If you don't have that, you don't have the Life of Pablo, in my opinion. If it just ends on Fade, it's just kind of weird. It's kind of how I feel about Yeezus. I really like Yeezus, but the fact that it ends on Bound 2, I honestly don't really like Bound 2 that much. I'm not really into that track. I don't listen to it very often. I don't really like it. I feel like if Jesus would have ended on something hard or I don't know, just anything else, it might have been a completely different experience. And it's interesting how track arrangement can do that. But with the Life of Pablo, to release it and then later add that song, man, that's a tough one. Now, it needs to have it. So, I mean, that's the silver lining, I guess. But I would be upset if Kendrick came out now and said, oh, no, the Big Steppers, everything that you guys heard, I changed this song and this song's here and there's a new song in. No. Don't do that. Don't do that. And I did want to say, in terms of people who create art and do that, there's two phases. There's the creative process, and that part belongs entirely to the artist. Okay? When you're creating whatever you're creating, if you have any artistic inclinations at all, that's yours. When you're doing that, whether you intend to show it to other people or not, when you're in that process, that is yours. And it's such a great experience. Hopefully. Sometimes it's awful. Sometimes you're trying to make something and it's not going well and can be very frustrating. But it's still yours. The moment you're done and you say, okay, final brushstroke, final chisel, final, sentence, whatever. When you're done and you release it out to the public, it is no longer the artist's. It belongs to everyone else now. Everyone else. So this idea of coming in later and altering it, I'm very much against that. So there you go. There's that, which kind of rolls into the other note about St. Pablo needing to be the final track in the album. Overall, I think this is Kanye's best album. I really do. And I'm kind of excited to talk about that because Kanye, in a sense, the way his discography is and the music that he's made, everybody has different albums that are their favorite. And I feel like this is an album where there's a lot of people who go, no, not my favorite album. But I feel like you can also look at it and appreciate it. And lots of people left comments saying, oh, wow, I kind of appreciate or understand this album more after, Bob, your reaction to it and talking through it. And that's cool because I had my experience with the Igor album by Tyler and how I didn't really get into it. And then I listened to it more and read comments and tried to understand it more. And I did understand it more and I grew to appreciate it more, but I still didn't like it. It just wasn't my thing. And so I feel like anybody who thought maybe that was kind of a sack of shit, like, what are you talking about? You can't enjoy or appreciate something, but then also not like it. Like, no, you can. So hopefully this is an experience for you guys who maybe don't enjoy the album, but now you just kind of understand it a little bit more because it's incredible. Low Lights, that track, man, I mean, it's not even a song, but that track is so important, where he's just going on and on and on about all the things God will do, what will happen, what he's going to do. I won't be crying at night alone anymore, and I won't be doing... He's saying all the things that are happening now. I'm so lonely and I'm crying and I'm awake at night and I don't know how I'm going to get through this and I don't know how I'm going to deal with that. And it's incredible, but it's completely between the lines, that track. And so I also have a note here I wanted to share. I'm finding that this video is a little helter-skelter, but that's okay. It sounded better in my head on my drive home. When I got to Low Lights, and I got stirred up, right? Some of you might remember that. I got kind of emotional on that, which surprised me. And I even said in the video, I don't know why I'm getting stirred up about this, which was true at the time. But as I thought about it later, now I know why it stirred me up, because it reminded me of some of the stuff I felt over 10 years ago. And you guys, some of you may have known or may know that I used to be Christian. I'm not Christian anymore. I went through that whole thing. And every now and then people ask, what was the deal with that? So I figured I'd share my story. And my story, in my opinion, is not necessarily terribly interesting. I basically had what Buddhists would call the realization of the self. I was driving to work one morning. It was like 5:30 in the morning. It's dark. There's nobody on the road. I'm half awake. Nothing. There's nothing new, nothing interesting, nothing weird. Nothing. It is a normal day. Normal day. And I'm driving along, and all of a sudden, I just have this extreme moment of clarity, of All of existence is one. There is no separation. There's no anything. It's all one entity. Everything as it is absolutely perfect in the sense of how it is supposed to be. It is how it's supposed to be. Now, we obviously have our own definitions of what is good and what is bad. That still exists within this framework, this structure, but it is how it's supposed to be. And in this mindset, there were no questions. Everything made perfect sense. And it was the weirdest experience. It lasted probably 20 seconds. And you know how sometimes you get these weird epiphanies and you try and like latch on to the idea. The harder I tried to hold on to the idea, the more it just diminished and went away. And what was so critical about that moment was in that moment, there was no external God. Basically, my view is that existence is God, that we are all part of existence and therefore part of God, and God is us, and all that kind of stuff. I won't tear into that rabbit hole too far, but there's the general idea. And that experience was so intense. It's probably the most intense experience I've ever had in my life, honestly. That, of course, it naturally brought questions into my mind. I started asking things. I started getting weird answers from people, which made me have more questions, which led to more weird answers. Because, unfortunately, with religion, typically, not all the time, but typically, there's a structure that you exist within, and this is what you're supposed to believe, and this is what you're not supposed to believe, and so on. And there's communities that support these ideas, and you exist within communities, and you go to them when you have questions, and they're supposed to help you with stuff. And I just was not getting answers that I found to be acceptable, and that just led me on this path. And I was raised Christian. I was when I was a kid, I remember going to Bible school and all that stuff. So this was, I was early 30s, 30, something like that. So this was 25 years of fundamental stuff being shaken in my head, right? It was very unsettling. And I still remember pretty vividly getting to a point where I realized I don't believe in God. Like I don't. And when you are raised to believe in God and you are raised to believe what happens to people that don't believe in God, that is a weird space to be in. Because it's very conflicting, right? Very conflicting. And I still remember, too, talking to my wife one day, just in tears, almost like in a panic, telling her how now that I don't believe in God and I've let all that go, I finally actually understand what it means to give everything away to God and actually let go. And I felt so inverted. I felt so inside out, backwards, whatever you want to call it. It made no sense to me that how could it be that I've come to this point in my life where I finally feel like I understand a relationship with God, yet now I don't believe in the existence of one. It's very strange. And it's a very emotional time in my life. My wife and I were kind of like, we were fine in terms of our relationship, but she's still Christian. That was obviously difficult for her to process, for me to process. We got baptized together after we were married. Not like during the wedding or anything, but some years after we got baptized together. This was a fundamental part of our lives, my life, her life, our lives. And I just remember, man, I don't know what the hell's going on. And that just struck me. Low Lights, that song, and that weird just hesitation and like that sense of calling out and waiting for some sort of answer, And that was another thing too, like believing in God and all the things that you learn about, whether it's Christianity, which is where I was from, but other religions teach it too, of if you call out to God, God's going to answer and God's going to be there for you and all this other stuff. And I remember thinking to myself, man, here I am just wandering down the path of not believing, and I'm just calling out. I'm calling out, and I'm getting nothing. So that's why Low Lights struck so well with me. He really captured that. And then that's why St. Pablo is so important too, because that closing verse with, I forget who the feature is, but that closing verse where it's talking about, I wish you would just come, I'm here at the bar and I'm crying and I wish you would just come down and look me in the eye like you know me. Powerful. Very, very powerful. Very powerful. In terms of the entire album, the broad album, it feels like a mental episode. And this is another note I put down. It just felt like an episode. And I don't have that. I've never experienced any kind of that. So I can only assume. And I got this great message on Twitter from Kira. And Kira was telling me about, I guess there's bipolar 1 and bipolar 2. And Kira has one of them and Kanye has the other one. Anyway, even the one Kira has, which was like a more mellow version, crazy. Well, it's a poor choice of words on my part. Poor choice of words on my part. I apologize. Everything's crazy to me, right? Poor choice of words. Unbelievable, wild, these extreme swings in mood from just being up, in feeling like, yes, you're a genius and you're surrounded by people who are so confused and they're so blind and they don't understand that you almost feel shackled by them. And feeling like you could do anything if it weren't for them holding you back and their mindsets being so off, and then turning and just falling from sky high to rock bottom. Wild, wild stuff. And that's what I appreciate about this album so much, is why I enjoy it so much. Even though there's a lot of songs on here I really like, but I don't think any of these are really my favorite Kanye songs. Maybe St. Pablo would get in on the top 10, but the rest of them, they're good, but there's so many others that I like more. But it's the way these songs exist together within the album, the purpose they serve within the album, these weird just turns, like part 2, where it's going and then it just stops and it goes into this low voice of, how can I find you? Where can I find you? It feels like an episode. It feels like somebody's mind that's just out of control. Out of control. And that's really why I like it. I got a message from somebody else saying how apparently JPEG Mafia, when he was making Veteran, just listened to this album over and over and over again. And I can fucking feel that for sure. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if that's true or not. But yeah, I could feel that for sure. Let's go through the tracks a little bit. Let's go through the tracks. I love how it opens up. Ultralight Beam is great. I love how patient it is, and it just builds, and then it dumps into Father's Touch My Hands, part 1 and part 2. Famous is a cool song. I watched the video. Okay. Just gonna leave it at that. Leave it at that. No, I'm not even gonna tell you about it. Maybe after I'll tell you about it. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe I'll just let you watch it. You won't even finish it. I guarantee you won't finish the video. Lowlights I talked about. And then, it just jumps, right? Out of these lowlights into the highlights. Like a turn. Like this episode. Freestyle 4 is great because it feels like a waking nightmare. And I got a message from William. He was talking about, you got to watch the video from Most Unruly, talking about how Kanye's really likes Stanley Kubrick and Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut, and how there's a lot of imagery that exists between the two, and I totally agree with that. Like the Most Unruly video talking about that is really good in breaking down the similarities that exist between Eyes Wide Shut, the film, in a lot of the stuff that Kanye talks about in the world that he seems to be trapped in and trying to escape from. But Freestyle 4 is great too, just in that sound. It feels like a waking nightmare. Like, it's not so odd that it feels like I'm asleep, but there's really this sense of, uh-oh, what's happening? This is happening. And it's out of control, and it's kind of dark, and it's eerie, and it's just constantly getting away from him. Kanye has no control over what's going on there. And then it drops right into I Love Kanye. Just out of nowhere, And I feel like if you try and follow these breadcrumbs, like this mental state of, and then people talk about how they miss the old Kanye. Like Kanye feels like his life is out of control And that reminds him of people talking about how they miss the old Kanye. And so he makes this weird song to kind of make fun of that. Waves, I don't really get into a whole lot. It's a good song, but I don't really get into it. FML, Real Friends, fantastic tracks. I love both those songs. I let them play all the way through together. From Wolves and Frank's track and Silver Surfer and 30 Hours, someone linked me the original version of Wolves. I kind of like it more. I understand why people don't like it. It sounds unfinished, people have said, and stuff like that. I kind of get that. But I like having Frank's track integrated into it because then his track has a little bit more context within the structure of Wolves. And to me, it makes a little bit more sense. And the Silver Surfer intermission, I didn't realize this. I guess this album was supposed to be called Waves initially. And so that was something to show that Kanye didn't have beef with the other guy because the other guy made him change the album name. I don't know. Anyway, that's what some comments said. But from Wolves, Frank tracks, the intermission, 30 Hours. I like 30 Hours for the beat, but I don't really listen to it that much because it kind of wanders off. But those 4 tracks in general, it feels like the album kind of loses a little bit of steam there, but then it picks up. Like No Parties in LA. No More Parties in LA is incredible. Legendary in the sense that it's Kendrick, Kanye, Madlib. Great verses from both of those guys. But then 2, it just feels like, please, baby, please, no more parties in LA. Please. Like he begging his own mental state, please, no more of this. Please, please. Because he just doesn't have control. He doesn't have control. And so these episodes, these swings where he goes from these really, really lows into these highs, into these, I want to go party. I want to go be the famous rap. Please, please, I just want to stop doing that. That's what I get from that track. Please, no more parties in LA. Like he just wants out. He just wants out. That's my impression. If I'm right, if I'm wrong, whatever. There you go. Facts is cool because it's just got a great little beat. I mean, it's going and then it takes these auditory turns and it's just a cool beat throughout. Fade is fine, but I'm so glad the album does not end on Fade. Completely different experience if it does. And then St. Pablo, of course, I talked about. I think that's it. Yeah, that's all my notes. That's the track listing. Fantastic album. And what's weird is, like I said before, I enjoy a majority of these songs, but I don't know if any of these songs make my top 10. However, what they're doing, how they function within the album, how they bounce off of each other, how they contrast each other. This is my favorite Kanye album. It is. It really is. I listened to it a shit ton this week. A shit ton. There's just something about it, man. There's something about it. Oh, and of course the Pablo thing. People told me the 3 Pablos. Pablo Escobar, Pablo, whoever. So I get that. That makes sense too. Hopefully, those of you who don't enjoy this album as much, hopefully you can have a little bit more appreciation for it. You probably still won't like it. That's just how it goes sometimes. But man, that was great. Really, really great. So Friday, I don't have my schedule open, but I think Friday is Mac Miller. I guess I'll just make it Mac Miller since now I have said Mac Miller swimming. And I'll talk about more on Friday why there is not a poll for which album it's going to be, because I said that for like months. Oh, there's going to be a poll. There's going to be a poll. And now there's no poll. Sometimes I just do shit. I just change my mind, There you go. I don't know. Sorry. Think about that. I want, before I end this, I just want to put this out there. This idea, what I said at the beginning about Kendrick. What if Kendrick looked at this album and really saw it for what it was as a piece of art, as a piece of storytelling, but also realized it's not direct. We need to just be direct. And this was the other thing. This is why I brought that up. Kendrick with Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers and what he said in that album and what he accomplished. To me, that is the huge difference between these two artists, between Kendrick and Kanye, because I feel like Kendrick got out. Kendrick is out. And you guys know that I feel like he's retiring. Or who knows if that's true or not. I'm not really saying that, using this as proof to, Kendrick is retired. what I'm saying is Kendrick got out of the industry. He got out of the lifestyle. He made a deliberate choice to leave. Because in this album with Kanye, you can see him trying to wrestle between these two states of world famous rapper, holy person, you know, with his wife, with his family, that kind of thing. Those two worlds cannot exist. And I wonder if Kendrick looked at this album and looked at Kanye and went, God damn, you have to choose one or the other. It can't be both. And what is it? I mean, what does it say in the Bible? You can't serve two masters, right? That's what it says in the Bible. I don't remember the verse exactly. It's been a while. But I think of Kendrick. I think of Kendrick because of this album. I wonder what Kendrick thinks of St. Pablo or Life of Pablo, and how it made him think of Kanye, and how it made him think of the lifestyle, the industry, the decision to pursue one or the other, all that kind of stuff. It just rolls around in my mind. I want you guys to let it roll around in your minds too, because it's neat to think about. It was probably going to become a meme. Like, remember last year where it was everything I did about Kanye was all about Hold My Liquor, right? Everything was tethered to that for some reason. I think going forward, there's going to be a lot of stuff that I look at through the lens of Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers, because what Kendrick put out there was incredible. And it's really hard to not have that in my mind while I look at other things now. So hopefully I don't bring that up all the time, but you can expect it. Everything's going to be about Kendrick now. All right, y'all. I'll see you guys Friday.